The sea holds secrets it will never willingly give up. But sometimes, when the water is clear and the sun strikes it just right, it whispers. If you were to stand on the rocky shore of southern Laconia in Greece, on a day when the wind dies and the waves lie flat, you might hear that whisper, the faint echo of footsteps on streets no longer dry, the murmur of voices long silenced, the ghostly pulse of a city that has not seen the open air in 5,000 years. Beneath the gentle sway of seagrass and the darting of silver fish, an entire town lies sleeping. Streets, walls, courtyards, and tombs, the bones of a place that thrived long before Athens, before Sparta, even before the great palaces of Mycenaean rose in their golden glory. Its name is Pavlopetri, and it is the oldest submerged city ever found. But Pavlopetri is more than an archaeological wonder. It is a time capsule sealed by the sea, a reminder that history is not just written in stone and ink, but in the silt and salt that guard humanity's forgotten chapters. And it raises a haunting question. If a place so vast and ancient could vanish beneath the waves, what else lies out there, waiting in the blue? Let's go back, far back, to when Pavlopetri lived and breathed. It is the early Bronze Age, around 2800 BC. The world is smaller, the Aegean less crowded by empires. Along the coast of what is now Laconia, there is a bay, calm, sheltered, rich with fish, and close to fertile land. Here, settlers have built something remarkable, a proper town, not just a scattering of huts, but an organized community with stone foundations, paved streets, and rectangular buildings. Picture it, the sun rising over the bay, turning the water gold. Fishermen push out in long, narrow boats, nets piled in the stern. Children chase each other through narrow lanes between houses, their laughter mingling with the lowing of goats. Women grind grain on flat stones, the air warm with the scent of baking bread. Traders arrive from across the sea, their hulls heavy with obsidian from Melos, copper from Cyprus, and fine pottery painted in swirling designs. Pavlopetri is a hub, not large perhaps, but thriving. Its architecture shows a people who understood planning. Narrow streets ran in straight lines, intersecting at right angles. Buildings were grouped in blocks, some with multiple rooms. There were open courtyards where neighbors gathered and wells where fresh water was drawn. And beyond the houses lay tombs, stone-built chamber graves for the dead, carefully placed as if to keep the departed close to the living. But as centuries passed, Pavlopetri changed hands and faces. The Minoans, masters of trade and art from Crete, likely touched its shores, leaving behind their influence in pottery styles and weaving patterns. Later came the Mycenaeans, with their warrior kings and far-reaching trade networks. Pavlopetri adapted, absorbed, and continued, century after century, through the ebb and flow of cultures. And then, sometime around 1000 BC, it was gone. No single catastrophe is recorded, no poem laments its fall. Instead, the sea simply took it. Some say the land subsided after a series of earthquakes. Not sudden enough to be remembered in myth, but relentless, lowering the streets inch by inch until the waves claimed them. Others believe a tsunami, perhaps triggered by a distant eruption, finished what the quakes began. Whatever the cause, Pavlopetri slipped beneath the surface and disappeared from human memory. For over 3,000 years, the sea kept her secret. Fishermen sailed over it, unaware that their nets brushed the tops of ancient walls. Storms rolled in from the Mediterranean, churning the waves above a city that lay untouched, its streets silent but perfectly preserved. It wasn't until 1967 that the secret stirred. A young geologist named Nicholas Fleming, mapping the coastline near the village of Pavlopetri, noticed something unusual beneath the shallow water, shapes too straight, too deliberate to be natural. He had stumbled upon a lost city. The following year, a team of archaeologists from the University of Cambridge arrived, and what they found was astonishing. Under just 3 or 4 meters of water lay an entire grid of streets and buildings stretching over 9 acres. The layout was still visible: a central avenue, smaller side streets, stone foundations outlining rectangular rooms. There were courtyards, tombs, even the remains of a complex drainage system, something few Bronze Age towns possessed. The sea, ironically, had preserved it. Without waves pounding directly on its walls or modern construction disturbing the site, Pavlopetri had remained almost frozen in time, like a photograph in stone. But as divers mapped the ruins, more questions emerged. Some pottery fragments dated back to the early Bronze Age, around 2800 BC, a staggering age that pushed the history of organized towns in Europe further back than many had thought possible. This was no primitive fishing village. Pavlopetri had been a planned, thriving urban center centuries before the great Greek city-states existed. And then came the most tantalizing thought. Pavlopetri may not have been unique. If such a town could be lost and forgotten for thousands of years, could there be others? Entire networks of coastal settlements, erased by the slow creep of the sea or by sudden disaster, waiting in the quiet dark just beyond our shores. The mystery deepened in 2009, when a joint Greek-Australian expedition returned with new technology. Using side-scan sonar and underwater mapping, they revealed an even larger site than previously thought. Nearly 20 acres of streets, plazas, and buildings. They could even see stone-lined roads leading straight into the sea, as if the city still awaited travelers. What struck many was how familiar it looked, not in style but in purpose. The streets, the neighborhoods, the communal spaces, they could have belonged to any town in any age. The people of Pavlopetri lived, worked, traded, celebrated, and mourned here. They had dreams, rivalries, and loves. They were us, only with different tools and different gods. And yet they were also foreign in ways we may never understand. We don't know the name they gave their city or the language they spoke. We don't know what songs they sang at weddings or what prayers they offered to the sea that both fed and eventually destroyed them. All of that has been swallowed by the waves. Today, Pavlopetri lies in water so clear that on calm days you can see its walls from the surface. Divers who swim its streets describe a strange sensation, as though the city isn't entirely empty, as though the sea itself remembers. Fishes dart through doorways that once framed human lives. Seaweed carpets the plazas where merchants once haggled. The tombs are quiet, their stones softened by centuries of salt. But preservation is a fragile gift. Modern threats loom: pollution, careless boat anchors, even the rising seas of climate change. Archaeologists are racing to record every inch of Pavlopetri before it is damaged beyond recognition. In doing so, they hope not only to save the site, but to learn more about the people who built it. Some researchers have drawn connections between Pavlopetri and the myths of lost cities, even Atlantis. While Atlantis was likely a philosophical allegory in Plato's writings, the idea of a thriving society claimed by the sea resonates strongly here. Others see Pavlopetri as part of a larger Bronze Age world connected by trade and culture, a reminder that history was never as isolated as we sometimes imagine. What is certain is that Pavlopetri forces us to rethink the boundaries of our past. We often picture history as a straight road, with milestones neatly marked by written records and monumental ruins. But Pavlopetri reminds us that history is also a coastline, shifting, eroding, sometimes vanishing entirely. And just because a chapter is underwater doesn't mean it's lost forever. Standing on the shore, looking out toward the spot where Pavlopetri sleeps, you might feel a strange pull, the sense that you are standing at the edge of two worlds. Behind you, the modern one hums with cars and phones and satellites. Before you, under the waves, lies a world without voices, where time moves at the pace of the tide. The light changes as the sun begins to set, turning the water the color of molten gold. For a moment, it's easy to imagine the city still there in its prime. The shouts of sailors hauling nets, the smell of baking bread drifting from an open window, the warmth of the stone streets underfoot. Then a wave laps at the shore, and the vision dissolves. Only the sea remains, and the knowledge that beneath it lies a story thousands of years old, still waiting for us to listen. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the oldest submerged town known to history. What do you think life was like in Pavlopetri before the sea claimed it? Do you believe there are other cities like it, hidden just beneath the waves, waiting to be discovered? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps keep these stories alive.